Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
This is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Heidi Chance with me here today. Heidi is a seasoned expert with 27 years on the front lines of law enforcement, deeply committed to the fight against human trafficking. As the founder of A Chance for Awareness, Heidi leverages her extensive experience to educate both law enforcement and the community and the public. Welcome, Heidi. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
But before you get into your background, the context again for this is the local area, right? How are you sharing your success and making an impact in the Phoenix area? What are some of the prominent highlights in your career so far in your life journey? And maybe you can share some instances of what sort of took you on that path.
Yeah, so I'm happy to say I am a third generation police officer. So my dad was an officer also for Phoenix Police Department, and then he retired and went over to Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and did another 12 years there. So between the two of us, we have, 60 plus years of law enforcement.
Wow.
And then my grandfather was actually an officer in New York. And
nice.
So third generation.
Very cool. Thank you.
In the blood for sure.
Thank you. All right. And where in the valley you've been large throughout the whole valley or focused largely downtown in the Phoenix area?
Yeah, so Phoenix Police Department has how many precincts do we have? We have 6 or 8 precincts. And I worked almost all of them. But mainly my first 10 years I spent in West Phoenix in the Maryville area, if you're familiar with West Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah. So I grew up as a cop in the West Side and I got thrown into all kinds of situations that, really taught me a lot. Part of being at Maryville Precinct, I also spent some time as a school resource officer. And so that's where I think a lot of my rapport building with youth comes from.
Sure.
I am a mother, but at the time I, had a toddler. So teenagers is a whole other ball game. And getting to know teenagers as a school resource officer at a middle school was very unique for me. And that's what led me to investigating human trafficking.
Okay, excellent. So I'm sure that's incredibly impactful and rewarding to be working with people in those formative years, I guess.
Yeah. It was definitely a good time. I mean, I spent 6 years as a school resource officer, and I really didn't even think that I was there that long. I have to say, I feel like I impacted the traffic in that area because I knew those kids were already driving, and they had us teach a class. And I'm not, prior to that, I hadn't any teaching experience, so I taught the driver's manual. So I went and got a whole bunch of the driver's manuals, and I got little matchbox cars, and I would draw intersections on the whiteboard, and we would talk through, yielding and failure to yield from a driveway and all kinds of things that would happen. And I feel like that really helped me get rapport with those students and help them, understand the rules of the road.
Okay, excellent. Sure. That's with teenagers myself, they often don't want to hear it from me. So I appreciate you. And I'm sure everyone who drives in the roads here appreciates your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So being a police officer, one of the things I talk about here, I do real estate investments, but I love to meet and network with different people here in the Valley. One of the things we often talk about is risk. And as a police officer, I'm sure your appetite for risk is pretty unique and special. Can you talk about how that's affected your choices and your career and success in your career, but also how it's changed over time?
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit to see, to tell the story of how I even got involved in human trafficking.
Please.
As a school resource officer, we had a patrol car that we would park out front of the school, and you can't take that home. So you have to take it back to the station and turn the keys in every day. And so I remember going into the station, returning the keys, walking past where they have 2 rooms that are the juvenile interview rooms. And I remember passing by this girl that I saw in the room
From
in
school.
trouble, and I realized she was a former student of mine. She
Okay.
recognized me, and basically she had told me she was involved in prostitution. And that's,
Oh, boy.
one of those things that really impacted my thought process on, obviously I had been caught for 6-7 years already, and here's this little girl in trouble for prostitution, and I didn't even think it was an issue for kids. And so
Right.
that's what really inspired me to get involved with human trafficking. And so I ended up transferring to the unit, and that's where I spent 14 years almost as an undercover in the human trafficking unit. So seeing the evolution of this problem and law enforcement's response to this problem is definitely something I witnessed. And then, as we evolve, the bad guys still evolve. And when you mentioned real estate, I wanted to share with you about my observation as far as real estate and specifically Airbnb or VBRO or any of the short-term rentals. Traffickers use hotels. We know that hotels are
Right.
getting more word to the wise about this issue. In fact, there are some being held liable and being sued by
Okay.
victims. And now we have a situation where traffickers are realizing the cops know about us using hotels. How about Airbnbs and short-term rentals? And so I've had some investigations involving that demographic, and, education to that community is really important on, what is human trafficking, how to recognize if a trafficker is renting your house, and what to
Right.
do about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a number of investors in that space, so it's information I'll be happy to share and pass along. Thank you.
Yeah.
So back to the individual that you met early on, have there been people in your career that you've connected with, that you've been able to particularly help, or special cases that you followed up on that are particularly rewarding or that drive you
Yeah.
especially?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of happy endings in human trafficking. A lot of that surrounds victims that don't see themselves as victims. They have a lot of shame associated with what's been going on, a lot of trauma. So as far as good stories, I have a couple where we've resulted in going to trial and putting their trafficker away for hundreds of years, and that, I would say, that's pretty good as far as a success story. But there are a lot, unfortunately, that returned to prostitution, got heavily into drugs, got arrested for other crimes, and never really prosecuted their trafficker, and their entire, trajectory of their life went a whole other way because of human trafficking. And, that is the sad reality that exists with this issue.
Right. Kind of drugs get in the mix, and other disorders and mental problems. It really, prevention is really paramount, I would say. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
That's thank you for for spearheading all the education and stuff in that regard. That's great. I'm sure, as you said, things don't always work out well when you have setbacks and stuff. Are there particular challenges that have tested you, that that have made you stronger, that you've had to overcome? Anything you can share about that?
Yeah, and it's one of those where, unfortunately, kind of like someone using drugs, until they're ready to get off drugs, they're not going to stop. And prostitution's a little bit of a situation like that. I mean, you have people who can make $80 in 5 minutes, and, getting out of that lifestyle, what appears to be a freedom lifestyle, which really they're under the thumb of a trafficker's control. They're not really free, but they have been led to believe that this lifestyle is, something that is special and amazing, and all the false promises that a trafficker may have explained to them. And, when they do get out, it's really hard for them to reintegrate back into society and work at McDonald's for minimum wage. You know what I mean? So
Right.
providing opportunities, employment opportunities, along with counseling and, continued support all throughout their healing process is really imperative. And that's where we are doing better, but we're not there yet. We don't have all of the things in place, in my opinion, that, in a perfect world we would need to make this much better than it is right now.
Sure, sure. Like giving attention to, I mean, there's been some more mainstream media on, like, was it Sounds of Freedom
Yes.
and such, that I think help raise awareness a lot. But it is very insidious, right? The subtle manipulations of it's not what I used to think of personally. I didn't realize how it could be just people in your neighborhood, just get coerced into that so easy, or not. I don't know if it's easy, but yeah, I always thought it was like people. I don't know what I thought, and maybe old movies and stuff where people were like kidnapped and put in like a
Yeah. Lots of
shipped off
myths.
somewhere else anyway.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a lot of people, Sound of Freedom's great. It was, a movie that brought human trafficking to the forefront of people's minds. My only comment about Sound of Freedom is it's a depiction of international trafficking. It's not really what it looks like here domestically in the United
Right.
States. And then I also write articles for Brains Magazine and on my own blog on my website. And I wrote an article specific to this topic of there are different types of trafficking. There is the more organized trafficking, kind of like what you would think the brothel or what people envision is going on with the border or even massage parlors. And then you have individual trafficking, where you have individuals trafficking multiple other vulnerable victims. And, there are different two types, some similarities, but there is definitely two different types. But that's more of what's happening here in the United States than what you see in that movie. I would suggest watching Sex Trafficking in America, which is an actual documentary that was done 5 years ago, this May, actually,
Okay.
in 2019, and it was put out by Frontline PBS. And they filmed our unit and they followed us around, and you get to see not only a case involving a juvenile and see how that goes, but you also get to see law enforcement's response to this problem with our undercover operations.
Okay. And how other than awareness, how has that industry or your approaches both been changing over time with maybe technology advancements, other stuff?
Yeah, so part of my focus is, community outreach and explaining to the community that it isn't like what you think as far as the white van and the creeper with the white van. And, the internet is really what's opened the door for this to expand and explode. And, as an undercover, I've participated in operations where I've had, my undercover social media profiles. I have 7 Facebooks, 4 Instagrams, Tag, Meet Me, Bumble, Plenty of Fish, Snapchat, TikTok. I just opened up a Discord, all in undercover personas. That is with the intent to have a trafficker try and recruit and groom me instead of a live victim. And when I'm doing that, I'm realizing that these individuals who we already know have no other job. Their only job all day long is to manage the victims they have right now and to look for new ones, because that's how much more money they're going to make if they have more victims. And really that's what they're doing all day long is using social media. And when you have kids that don't have conversations with their parents, or their parents don't talk to them about open profiles and how dangerous that is, or if a predator says these things to you, this is what you need to do and come report it to me, and those kind of things. And that's, one of my other outlets, as far as I travel around doing the community or outreach, and I'm constantly saying you need to have these conversations, but I never really said how to have these conversations.
Right.
So that's where I'm going to plug my book. I just
Okay.
wrote how to have these conversations with my book, Talk to Them, because I feel that law enforcement, when we get involved, it's already happened. It's already too
Right.
late. So it's really important that we prevent these things from happening in the first place.
Okay, so that gets sort of into the next sort of phase of questions that I usually like to ask people about, is sort of your leadership or management sort of approach or style, but also your own development and mindset and how you help other people and share that with other people. Well, there you go. You have a book that you try to explain how to have such conversations. Is there anything else you can talk about in that regard? Your own growth and such?
Yeah. So I have, since I retired in October of 21 from Phoenix Police Department, I still have quite a passion about this particular crime. And I have lots and lots of experience, spending 14 years as an undercover working this specific crime. So I have 2 missions. One is to continue law enforcement training specific to undercover operations, how to target sex buyers and traffickers and even child predators. And then, a focus on how to do these kind of investigations because they're really difficult. These are hard cases to prove. They are a lot of times I'm not going to have a witness that saw someone go have sex with the buyer, make money, and then turn that money over to their trafficker. And so I have to put together these cases with corroborative evidence, and having officers want to do all of that work is where we're at as far as inspiring them to do that work and put in the investigative need to find that corroborative evidence. And then my second mission is the community outreach. I do a lot of presentations in the community. I'm trying to get out on that speaking scene and do, keynote speaking. As an informational speaker, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm an informational speaker, but this is real stuff that people need to know to protect themselves and people they love and those kind of things. So my community outreach also extends to, I have an online class that I put out that's called The Power of Awareness, because I have literally witnessed the evolution of this problem, it getting worse and expanding with the internet, as well as our response to it, and law enforcement responding in a way that's different than before. Because before, we were just arresting prostitutes all day long. That's what we were doing. And now we were actually trying to offer help and ask the question we were never asking before, which is, what can we, the law enforcement, what can we do to help you get out of this situation? And then to back that up with a victim advocate to be able to offer services immediately right there out in the moment of rescue, so to speak, and then continuing with the resources and other things going on. And so my other ulterior motive is obviously reaching as many potential jurors as possible, because I have been through trials. I have participated in a 7-month-long trial with a very, very amazing sentence of 493.5 years for one trafficker, almost 500-year sentence. And that only happens if we have a jury that understands when I'm testifying that this person is a victim, even though I'm telling you they're freely walking down the side of the road with a phone in their hand, they are trapped and not free to leave. And for a jury to wrap their head around that, you really need the education and everything going on in the back end, so that when they're called for service, they really recognize the dynamics of human trafficking all the way around.
Right. And that's, you say you're not a motivational speaker, but when you have facts like that, that's like, I don't know, if you have some compassion or any values at all, it's hard not to be motivated by that.
Yeah.
I have, again, with my kids, one of the things I try to teach them a lot of is simple awareness. It's one of the most fundamental attributes, I think, for everyone, is to know what's going on, right? And so it's surprising to me. Maybe it's our culture or society right now where we're all so easily self-absorbed and into our screens and our whatever. But it's an incredible skill that we need to be reminded of and shared and focused on. So I think shining a light on that is it's very hard for us to get into other people's shoes and as you said, to appreciate that person is really not free. Different levels of slavery.
It is. It's modern day slavery happening in 2024.
Let's talk a little bit more about sort of your desired impact in the Phoenix area, and how your focus has changed over the past 10 years. When did you start your foundation or
my business? In 22. So right after I retired, I spent a little bit of time thinking, man, I have all of this experience I want to continue to share. And I was teaching for Phoenix Police Department. And then I also am an instructor for the National Criminal Justice Training Center at Fox Valley Technical College. So I actually travel all over the United States presenting on trafficking, mostly for social services and law enforcement in that capacity. But I want to get to corporate conferences, where you wouldn't think, hey, let's talk about human trafficking here, but we need to talk about human trafficking here. And so that's where I'm trying to go.
In what regards? In what type of conferences and stuff in the corporate setting and world? What are your hopes there?
Well, just like I really think it's important for realtor type conferences or conferences where you're, talking about short-term rentals specifically, and then even general, there's lots of people renting houses and then they open up a house of prostitution and the landlord has no idea that
Right.
that's going on, and what
Okay.
that would look like and how law enforcement would need cooperation and those kind of things to remove that problem from your house.
Sure. So
But in
like that.
addition,
Yeah.
yeah, in addition, just even tech companies, all of this technology that's being used by traffickers. And, most of the people who work for these corporations and these companies are parents. And so just general, I think, even awareness, in-service training for employees, employee development, I think we would need to be there as well, for general public information and employees knowing how to protect their kids and themselves. So it's really important.
For sure. Thank you. How has being an entrepreneur and starting your own business side of this, how's that experience been, and how has it changed you?
It's one of those things where I was just a cop my whole life so far, and this whole business thing is pretty interesting. I'm learning every day something new. And I watch a lot of YouTube. I call it YouTube University, and that's where
Yep.
I'm learning how to do most of my stuff. And thank goodness for that, because otherwise I would be, having to spend a whole bunch of money trying to have people help me with this stuff. As it is, I have to outsource a couple of things because I just don't know how to do some of this, but I'm learning.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice to be learning and growing yourself, as
Yeah.
well as your business. So,
Yeah.
um, regarding your success, and congratulations on being retired officially and thank you again for your service. What's one piece of advice that you give to someone aiming at similar success?
Yeah, so I know that this is a tough world right now. We don't have anyone wanting to be police officers, and we don't have anyone wanting to be prosecutors anymore. And it's one of those where we really need to start re-encouraging that, those two paths in high school or even earlier, and really support those organizations that help these kids get to that point, like the Explorer program, if you've ever heard of Explorers. That's part of the Boy Scouts of America. And, there are female and male explorers, but it's under the guise of the Boy Scouts. And, as an officer early on in my career, I was an advisor for the Explorers, and it was really neat to see these kids who got an inside look at that career path. And I think that we need to encourage more of those kind of things for our youth to get involved in.
Excellent. Yeah. My son is actually in Boy Scouts, and
Okay. Yeah.
it's a great program. Teaches them a lot of responsibility and stuff over time, which is very, very needed
Yeah.
nowadays.
Most law enforcement agencies have an Explorer program.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. So, for our listeners who want to learn more about you or connect, where can they find you, or a chance for awareness?
Yeah, so pun intended with my last name, a chanceforawareness.com. And then I have an Instagram, and it's a_chance_for_awareness. For whatever reason, I had to have the underscores in my Instagram name. And then we met on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is
Yes.
definitely where I am quite often as well. I kind of made it like my mission to do law enforcement focus with my connections on LinkedIn, but we connected on LinkedIn. So those are my platforms. And then my book is on Amazon.com. Talk to them. And then my online class, The Power of Awareness, is on my website.
Excellent. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you very much, Heidi Chance, for joining me today.
Absolutely. So nice to meet you. Thank you.
We appreciate you sharing your story and your insights and your success and your impact in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit PhoenixProsperityPodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.